Is non-duality a philosophy? Well, you could call it a philosophy, but if you treat it as a philosophy, you might overlook something very important about it. So for instance, if we say a non-dual philosophy says that reality is not actually divided up into separate objects, forms, doesn't actually experience distance, reality doesn't have a subject-object split inherent to it, then what happens is we believe, without looking too closely at it often, that what we're talking about is an actual representation of immediate experience, of actual experience. But it's really just a representation of thought. It's a representation of how we see the world through thought, through the lens of thought. And this is a hugely important distinction, because when I talk about non-duality as a possibility or a process, what I'm talking about has nothing to do with belief. You don't have to believe anything specific. You don't have to believe this or that for this process to work, for this process to unfold. In fact, you don't have to believe anything. It has nothing to do with belief. It has nothing to do with the way you arrange thoughts in your mind to make a picture of reality, whether that's a relatively accurate or a relatively inaccurate picture. So again, this process really has to do only with immediate direct experience. What are you actually experiencing? So the reason I say this is it's important to remind ourselves of this periodically. It's important to remind ourselves of the purpose with which we take on any endeavor. It's important for us to remind ourselves why we're actually putting this energy in, putting this effort in. So if we're doing it to experience reality in a more immediate, direct, real way, we may have one very different kind of outcome than if we engage in this to understand it better, to understand reality better, to be able to talk about it better to other people, to understand what other people are talking about when they talk about philosophy or metaphysics or epistemology or anything else, right? So these are very different motivations. And the motivation really matters, especially when it comes to the process of unbinding, the process of realizing living truth. Because what I'm pointing to when I talk in this way always is a possibility that you can see beyond your own perceptual filters, your own cognitive filters, your own belief filters. That there's a way to experience without any of those filters operating. And thus you'll experience things or non-things as they are. You'll experience reality as it is. Now, at this point, all of these words fail because they all sound philosophical. But the truth of this is the experience is non-philosophical. It's purely experiential. In fact, it's so purely experiential that even the idea of experience gets deconstructed. Because to have experience, you have to have someone, something, or some consciousness, or some agent experiencing, and some process, or some eventuality, or some set of stimulus being experienced. Even that turns out to be a paradigm. It turns out to be a cognitive process. The split between experience and experiencing, or the experiencer and the experience, that split itself turns out to be a cognitive process, a thought, essentially, a filter. So how do we experience even primary to that filter? Well, it starts with intention. The intention has to be sort of an uncompromising willingness to experience reality as it is. An alert discernment and a willingness to also relax enough so that we're not constantly imposing our own belief systems onto this momentary reality. So it is a balance. It's a balance of a certain kind of relaxation or openness or willingness and a sort of precision of attention and an alertness and a willingness or a will not to go unconscious, not to just get lost in thoughts. So you'll find this balance if you work at this. But start with the intention. Start with the purpose of taking on this endeavor, being to see, feel, hear things as they actually are, rather than to understand, to be able to talk about it better, to give your mind a cookie. Those motivations are fine, but they're not going to get you there. They often are used to actually distract our attention, to comfort us with the known. Because everything in the world of thought is the known. Even the unknown in the world of thought is still sort of in the realm of the known. There's an unknown that is completely beyond concept. There's an unknown that is completely beyond anything you've ever understood, even anything you've ever experienced as someone apart from experience. So this is to go fully beyond. That's what we're talking about here. So set the philosophies down and become alert. Become precise in your discernment of what's being experienced actually right now. And maintaining that alertness and that will to see clearly. Start to relax. Start to let your attention just dilate. Let it overtake you. Let the experience itself overtake. Until there is no division between experience and experiencer. This is good territory. Once you find this territory, you can rest in the experience itself and let the experience overtake. You can stop doing. Stop questioning whether or not you're getting it right. That kind of questioning is not helpful. That's questioning that leads to doubt. Or that indulges in doubt. The question is just to lead you to this experience, this experienceless experience. Once this is clear, you just stay here. Don't push and pull on your experience. Don't make thoughts. Don't contemplate. Don't conclude. Don't plan. Don't take notes. Just stay there. That's the key.